G'day, Mike here from ppcsavvy.com with another deep dive. So this, as you probably are aware by now, is a re-recording, in this case a pre-recording, you're getting it before everybody else in Planet Perry, of the remarketing section. Now, some of this you will have seen before if you are fanatical about going through all of my videos in PPC Savvy. Then some of the stuff in here on RLSA you will have seen before. I'm going to go into more detail than I've been into before of how to apply this in your accounts, both through the interface and using editor. And then at the end, just a quick reminder, again, you may have seen some more detailed talks on this where I go really deep into behavioral targeting and analytics remarketing. I'm just going to give you kind of the best of the best a little bit at the end. My remarketing grid stuff, I've shared slides of the talk that I gave at Traffic and Conversion Summit earlier this year at Ryan Dice's gig. This is an idea that I've come up with. I'll dig into that in a second. Haven't shared any of that, I don't think, other than a blog post in PPC Savvy, so apologies, it's a little overdue. Let's dig in. So, the remarketing grid. Let's start with real basics. This is ideally, essentially, it's a way to visualize your remarketing efforts, first and foremost. So to get you to picture, I'm a very visual person, as you may have figured out by now, a way to picture the remarketing efforts, but also, as you'll see as we go, it gives you a way to apply it so much more easily than using custom combinations. So when we start getting a bit more advanced with our remarketing and we want to target smaller segments of our audience, that's really what the grid has been designed for. So, quick recap to start. You know this, I am sure. Most accounts, when they set up remarketing, the first thing, because it gets automatically set up for you, is an all visitors last 30-day list. In other words, on the left axis here, on the Y scale, on the Y axis here, we can see that all visitors, that's what this side represents, and time across the X axis, across the bottom. And I'm saying this is a 30-day list, which means on day one, somebody comes along and they land on your site, they get added to your all visitors 30-day list. A couple of weeks later, they are still on the list because it's still within 30 days that they first landed on your site. 30 days later, they're still on the list, and then the next day, I like to think of this as they fall off. They fall off the end of the list. So on day 31, on day 40, on day 50, if they haven't been to your website in the last 30 days, they are no longer on your 30-day list. Pretty sure you know this. I'm pretty sure that's pretty obvious. Obviously, if they come back to your website at any point, Google doesn't remember that they were on day 15 when they came back, and therefore, oh yes, they're on remarketing list, keep them on there. The whole process starts again. They go back to being at the front, if you like, of that list, and they go back to being a day one person. You obviously don't get to see that. You don't get any details. You don't get to see a list of names and how long they've been on your remarketing list. You just get a number. Maybe that's 5,000, maybe that's 50,000 people on your particular remarketing list. Okay, so like anything database driven, this gets more powerful when we start to segment, slice and dice. And so we're going to start really basic here, and we're going to say there's three basic groups that apply to almost every website. First of all, we've got the not interested crowd. They landed on your website however they got there. Maybe it was through an AdWords click, maybe it's through Facebook, maybe it was organic. They've looked, they're just not that interested, and they are probably never coming back to your website. We can all think of dozens and dozens of sites that we've been to like that, we didn't like whatever it was, we didn't like the tone, we didn't like the colors, we didn't like what they had to offer, we didn't like the prices, whatever it was, we're just not going back there. The second group, down at the bottom, the most obvious group, are buyers or converted visitors. In other words, people that did what we wanted them to do. Now, they're fabulous. We love them. But from a remarketing point of view, not quite as useful to us as the interested group. Remarketing, marketing again to people that generally have not yet done what we wanted them to do is going to be a better group of people to target. For most businesses, there are definitely reasons to go after buyers and to upsell and cross-sell to them. Let's talk about that another time. For the most part, marketing to people that have shown interest in what you've got to offer, and we'll talk about how they've shown interest in a little bit. They've shown interest, but they have not converted yet. That's going to be our most useful and probably most profitable group to target. Well, actually, buyers and converted people is probably more profitable per person, but there's generally a lot less of those. Typical e-commerce store, maybe you have a conversion rate of 1%. So this interested group is probably of the order of 30 to 50 times, maybe even 100 times larger, and therefore there's more overall profit to be derived from this group of people. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so we've segmented across here. We've got our rows here, our swim lanes, if you're into that sort of stuff. However you want to think about this, I'm most interested in this middle chunk here, the interested people. To get really advanced with our remarketing efforts, and this is where the grid comes in, is if we then segment by time as well as the level of interest. Now, I must stress at this point, the numbers across the bottom are just for illustration purposes only. I am not saying, I repeat, I am not saying that you should set up and target people in the first 3 days, and then the rest of the first week, and then the second week, and then the rest of the first month, and that should be the way you segment your remarketing efforts. Absolutely not. This is just an illustration. Cool. Right. If we were to segment by time and by interest like this, well, the first thing that we could do would be to stop annoying the uninterested people. So in other words, rather than remarketing to everybody, how about we found a way to identify those really not interested people and only target interested or better people? Now, with some websites, and bounce rate is one way to think about this, but it's not the be-all and end-all. Just because someone has bounced from your site does not mean they're a crap prospect, but probably means they're on the lower end of the scale. If they've, it's a one-page visit. We won't get into a discussion about time on site because of a number of reasons and the way analytics measures that. But essentially, somebody that has only been on your site for a few seconds and then left, they're probably not interested. Now, ideally, you're going to look at the person, because if one person visits and they only visit for 5 seconds and then they leave, but then they come back a day later and they spend $500 with you, well, then it didn't mean that they weren't interested. It maybe just meant that they got caught up. So it's not a hard and fast rule. Just because somebody spends, say, less than 10 seconds or less than 30 seconds on your site does not mean that they will never be interested in what you have to sell, but it's a pretty good starting point. There are no absolutes. These are just starting points and ways of thinking about this. It's a good place to set up camp. You can always refine this later and improve it. For now, we're going to say, let's just stop annoying those people that, on average, based on their behavior, they weren't interested in what I got. Cool? Cool. Our best audience to target is generally, again, no absolutes, but generally speaking, they are going to be at the more recent end of the scale. So in this example, just for illustration purposes, somebody that has left the site or been to the site within the last 3 days is probably going to be more profitable. Let's just assume that we've looked at the analytics and we've determined this. We've worked out that more recent people are more likely to come back and buy in the near future. It just makes sense. Someone that's been to your website in the last few days is probably more interested in buying what you've got than somebody that was there 2 months ago, and they're probably more interested than the person that was there a year ago. So recency, there's a database segmenting thing, I guess, called, what is it? RMT, recency, monetary, and I've completely gone blank. RMF, recency, monetary, and frequency. Excuse me. Voice is going crazy this morning. How recent somebody has interacted with you generally is a guide that they are more likely to come back and interact with you again. So in what we're looking at here, someone that's interested, remember interested is people that have not done what you wanted them to do yet, generally speaking. They've shown interest very, very recently. They're most likely to be our best audience to target. Now, another benefit of the grid is that we can immediately visualize what we might want to do, how we might want to segment this. And again, just for illustration here, but just as an example, we might then choose to segment in this way using the dates across the bottom. So the dates across the bottom there obviously represent days that people have been on our remarketing list. And we might want to show different ads to those people based on that recency factor that I just talked about. So for instance, ad number 1 here might be our regular remarketing ad. Ad number 2, if they haven't come back and completed that conversion action yet, then maybe we try a different tack. So maybe we put a testimonial ad in front of them. And then ad 3, they still haven't bought, so maybe we put a discount in front. I'm not a big fan of using discounts, but hey, they often work. So maybe we give an offer a discount of 10%. They still haven't bought. We're up to week 2 now, day 15. So we put a different ad in front of them. Maybe it's about the awards that we've won. Maybe ad number 5 in the sequence. If we're really getting desperate and we really want to go for the sale, we offer a 25% discount. And then maybe we stop remarketing at that point, or maybe we just keep on going. It's entirely up to you. There's a bunch of different ways to do this. There are no absolutes. Another benefit of the grid, or another way of visualizing this, and well, the benefit of segmenting really is not just the grid, but a benefit of segmenting is, and this is probably one of the main ones, is that we can bid differently over time. So based on how likely it is that we think somebody is going to buy from us, and obviously in the perfect world we're going to use data to do this. At the beginning you may have to guess a little bit and then adjust based on the data. But generally speaking, bidding more for your most recent visitors is generally going to be a good thing. I've looked at some accounts where 80% of that remarketing spend is spent on people that have visited within the last 7 days. Again, it just makes intuitive sense. If we were to go after those very, very recent, highly interested people, those are the ones with the best chance of success. If we were to spend most of our time and effort and money there with that audience, testing different ads for those in that box number 1 there with the $4 signs, testing different ads there. Don't worry so much about those other boxes. They're not as important. They're not as likely to be profitable for you. Definitely bidding more for those because they are more likely to be profitable. And just a note on that bottom row, don't forget about the buyers, but also make sure you do create a buyers list for even if no other reason at all, to make sure that you then build, or is built automatically for you, a similar audience. Or on Facebook, that's going to be a lookalike audience. So being able to create a similar audience, people that are similar to your buyers, again, just makes absolute sense. So the reason I highlight that is there are ways in both AdWords and in Facebook where you can sort of build that interested audience without actually building a separate audience of your buyers. I don't have a screenshot of this, sorry, but you can specify that somebody has been to this page but not yet been to this page. In other words, they've been to the cart page of your website, but they have not been to the receipt page. In other words, they've clearly added a product to the cart and they've viewed the cart. They can't have bought yet because they haven't viewed the receipt page. So you can sort of shortcut what I'm going to talk about in a minute, which is custom combinations. There are ways around it, but I'm going to suggest you don't do that. You build 2 separate, or more than 2 separate audiences, one for interested and one for buyers. And just before we move on to how to implement this, I just want to make a note of this for you, that this has been working well for us of late, again, both in AdWords and in Facebook, and that is showing what we call occasional ads. So rather than just bidding down over time, but continually showing the ads over time, is taking a bit of a break. I've noticed this with my own browsing behavior. I don't know if someone is doing this on purpose to me. Obviously, I'm much more aware of remarketing than the average web user because I know how to set it up and I know how it's used on me. But I've noticed ads that I haven't noticed during this period here. So let's say this is, I show ads for 30 days and then I turn them off up until day 60. That's what the numbers across the bottom are representing here. So I've turned ads off between day 31 and 60. And then they pop up again between days 60 and 70. And I've noticed this when I see an ad again that I had seen after I've been browsing that site. I don't notice that I'm not seeing it, obviously, between days 30 and 60, but I do notice, and it is more obvious to me, that I'm seeing ads again for that site when they pop up again. And so it just makes sense then to continue that, to turn ads off for a little bit, again here between days 71 and 100, so turn them off for another month, and then pop up for another 10 days. Just based on my own browsing experience and based on the data that we've seen from doing this, very hard to split test this. So this is much more gut based than data based. I just think this is going to work better for most people. Again, really hard to split test that properly, really rigorously. So that's, a lot of gut and intuition on that one. All right, so let's walk through an example of how you would go and apply this to your AdWords account. This is really where the power of the grid as such comes in. So let's say that we wanted to target this. So I've changed the left-hand side a little bit here. And, well, I have, but you can think of it however you like. I've said the top row is not interested. And I've just ignored all of there's lots and lots of possible variations that you could have here. You could have people that are completely uninterested, a little bit interested. Level of interest is a grey scale. I'm just, for the sake of simplicity here, going to say that I want to target people that have viewed the cart, but have not viewed the checkout. Now, obviously, all the carts are different. If it's easier for you, then think of people that have viewed the checkout as buyers, if that works for you. But some cart systems, you view the cart, then you view the checkout page, and you put your payment details and so on in, and then you end up buying. So I'm just saying here, abandoned carts, basically. People that have viewed the cart but didn't proceed to the next step. Cool. And then date range across the bottom here. First column represents the first week. Second column represents basically the second week. And then the bit that we've decided we want to target is people in between days 15 and 30. So I'm going to assume that you've shown ads in the other areas, potentially, or not. It's up to you. How would we target people that have viewed the cart, but not the checkout page, but they viewed that cart page between 15 and 30 days ago? So hopefully the grid helps you visualize who we're going after. Now, the old way of doing this is, shall we say, complicated. Let's walk through these steps. So you have to create 3 custom combinations. This is the old way, and I'm going to show you a much cleaner, better, easier way to set up your remarketing than using custom combinations. You never need to use custom combinations again. The reason I like the grid is because I've rarely seen, in the thousands of AdWords accounts that I've looked at, I've rarely seen custom combinations either A, set up well, and then B, used well and properly in the account. To do this, the first thing we need to do would be to create a custom combo of everybody on our cart, people that viewed the cart, 30-day list, but not, a bit of Boolean logic for you, but not people on our cart 15 list. Just going to make a note to clarify this a little more next time I present this, because I think a picture here would probably help. Custom combinations are ways of combining 2 lists using some Boolean logic. So here we're saying show me everybody on the cart 30 list people that have viewed the cart in the last 30 days, but not people on the cart 15 list. That would be the first one we'd have to create. Then we'd have to do the same thing again, but for that checkout row on the list. So people that have viewed the checkout page in the last 30 days, which obviously that big list includes people that have seen it the last 15 days. If you have viewed the checkout page 7 days ago, you're on the checkout 15 list and you're on the checkout 30 list. But if you viewed, this is getting complicated now, isn't it? I definitely need a picture for this. If you viewed the checkout page 20 days ago, you're on the checkout page, your checkout 30 list, but you're not, you've fallen off the checkout 15 list. So to identify people just within that time frame that we're after, 15 to 30, we say custom combo of checkout 30, but not checkout 15. Cool. Then, in order to take that top box, but not the lower box on our previous diagram, this one, in order to ensure, so what we've done, what we've done is create the first custom combo was to only take that third box on the second row, the bit where the graphic is. The second custom combo was to create the box underneath that. The checkout 30 but not checkout 15 is the box directly underneath our little graphic there. And then the last custom combo says top box but not the bottom box. Take that cart 30 minus 15 custom combo and combine that with our checkout 30 minus 15 combo. Told you this was complicated, and now you can understand why nobody manages to set this up right. What we're going to do instead with the remarketing grid, I hope you're still with me and not throwing things at the screen at this point. What we're going to do instead is to say to target any square on the grid. What we do is we exclude the audience to the left of the square and we exclude the audience below the square. So in this case, to exclude the audience to the left, we're going to exclude the cart 15 audience. That covers those two red boxes there. And to exclude the box below, we're going to exclude the checkout 30 audience. Make sense? I'll show you exactly how to do that in a second. A note first on interested and what interested means. So for lead gen sites, generally speaking, the best way to build these interested lists is using the Google Analytics stuff, which again is why I'm going to have a little reminder of all of that towards the end of this presentation. With an e-commerce site, it's more obvious because it's more obvious the funnel people go through in a more linear fashion through your site. They tend to look at product pages and then cart pages and then checkout pages and then success pages. So building these in AdWords, where you have to use rules about the URL that people have seen, is doable. Lead gen, it's very difficult to say, build a list of anyone that's read 3 or more blog posts, for instance, if not impossible. So I'll show you how to do that in analytics. And as you may have guessed, the key to making this all work is creating multiple durations for each list type. So I'm going to say that a list type is viewed cart. A second list type is viewed checkout. A third list type might be viewed the success page. For each of those, and here's the example with an added to cart example, I'm going to create multiple lists, multiple audiences inside of AdWords. So here I've got my added to cart visitor 30-day list. In order to make this work, I then also need to create a 7-day and a 15-day list. And that's set up exactly the same way, obviously give it a different name, but it's the membership duration part there that you want to change. You can see membership duration 7 days, membership duration 15 days. That's the only change between them. That's what gives you the power to do this segmentation. You have to build essentially all these multiple options, and then you use the grid and the exclusions in order to apply them to the ad group. So let's now dig in and cover how to do that. Let's first use the interface. So obviously you're going to set up a new remarketing campaign, and you're going to create, first and foremost, you're going to create an ad group. So here you can see I've created an ad group called Abandoned Cart 15 to 30 days. So continuing on from the example that we've just worked through, how do we now go and apply that to our site? Well, the first thing you want to do is add the main targeting. I need to draw another picture here, which shows, if you can picture back that far, and I've said that little graphic was up here and we've excluded the boxes off to the left, excluded the box down below. What we're first doing is adding, how am I going to explain this? The whole bottom left of the grid. So everything from added to cart on down, because obviously people that have viewed the checkout have previously viewed the cart, so they're on both lists as well. Oh gosh, I'm butchering this horribly. I'm just going to assume you're with me. First bit, you add the targeting. So the highest up on the left-hand side and the furthest across over to the right on the x-axis, we've got cart and we've got 30 days. First bit is to add that. Sorry, I think that was just horribly confusing. Just ignore the last minute there. First of all, add our targeting. Second part is we add those exclusions. Again, the exclusions are everything to the left of the square on the grid that we want to target and everything below the square we want to target. So here you can see we're excluding, in this case on an ad group level. You can add exclusions at the campaign or ad group level. I'm going to suggest you do it at the ad group level. We exclude our added to cart 15-day list and our added to checkout 30-day list. Everything to the left, everything below. And that's what it looks like when you're all done. You can see under targeting, we've got interests in remarketing. And that's the core list that we're targeting. And then down below that, we've got exclusions at an ad group level. Again, interests in remarketing and our other two lists. Wow. I think I've made that more complicated than it needs to be. I'm toying with re-recording this, but I'm going to let it go because we've been going for a while here. And I know there's some good stuff in here. Hopefully, maybe by watching a second time, this will make more sense. Let me know in the comments below this, in the forum on BBC Savvy. Let me know if this was horribly confusing and you just didn't get it, and I will re-record it. But I'm just going to assume that we're all good, and I'm going to carry on to RLSA. How's that? All right, maybe I need a second example in there as well. But I can't do the lead gen example until I've talked about how to build interested groups in analytics. So I don't have that yet. RLSA, let's dig into that. So I've given you these use cases previously in BBC Savvy. There's a number of different ways you can use RLSA. There's two main uses, and then we'll dig into a few different use cases. The two main use cases are bid only or target and bid. This is a very, very key setting to understand when using RLSA, or really any of the bid modifications, bid adjustments they're now called, in AdWords. Let's look at a use case for bid only first. And this would be something like your existing keywords. So this graphic is meant to represent somebody is searching for you on Google, blue dot, left-hand side. They click on your ad, they visit your website, red rectangle in the middle. If they are then searching for you at a later date, and you know, because they're on a remarketing list, you know that they have already been to your website or in the recent past, then what you're doing with RLSA is you are able to say to Google, all right, they're still searching for that same keyword, a profitable keyword for me, and they're on a remarketing list, therefore I'm going to bid more. So, let's walk through this. Okay, so then the first decision we have to make is, do we want to show different ads to these people? If we don't want to show different ads, then we can use the same campaign and we use the bid only setting. So the alternative is obviously if we want to show different ads, we have to build a second campaign and use the target and bid. Bid only says, Don't change your targeting, Google. Show ads to everybody searching for buy XYZ online, but change the bid only if they're on my remarketing list. Just for clarification purposes, target and bid means only target the people that are on my remarketing list searching for this particular keyword and bid this amount. If we were to use target and bid by accident in this case, let's say we're applying this RLSA, we're applying this remarketing audience to our main search campaign. It drives 80% of our sales. What we're wanting to do is to say, look out for those recent visitors, look out for people on my remarketing list, and bid more for them because I know they're generally going to be more profitable. If we were to screw this up and use target and bid instead of bid only, what would happen is that most of that traffic would dry up and Google would only show ads to people on your remarketing list. So it wouldn't dry up overnight necessarily, but it probably happens fairly quickly because less people come through to your site, less people get cookied, less people on your remarketing list list shrinks, and now Google's got a smaller and smaller pool of people to show your ads to, less and less and less ads get shown, profits dry up. How do you do this? All right. The first thing to do is to know that you have to apply these audiences. So again, audiences and lists are kind of interchangeable inside the Google terminology, but you can apply an audience to only one ad group at a time. Yes, it's a bit of a pain in the ass. No way around that yet, other than using our editor that I'm going to show you. So, first thing you need to do is to select an ad group. Once you've chosen an ad group, the screen will look like this. You move into the targeting section and you want to click on that ad targeting and drop down underneath the targeting sub-navigation, I guess that is, right at the top there. And once you get into that, then you're going to choose the category of targeting that you want. So you're going to choose remarketing lists from there, at which point Google's going to show you all of the remarketing lists that you have in this particular account. You choose the one you want, in this case my all site visitors 90-day list. Click on the little chevron to add that to the list of selected lists over there on the right hand side. And I make sure down at the bottom that I'm using bid only, in this particular example, not target and bid. So that's the first bit. The first bit is adding your remarketing list to a particular ad group. The second and really important bit is then to make sure that you add that bid adjustment. Do not leave it with the two little dashes that you see here. At a minimum, please do this and go and add some remarketing audiences to some of the ad groups in your campaign just to see how you can do this, and put a 0% bid mod in place. What that is going to do is it's going to split your data in two, and it's going to show you some additional data for those returning visitors, which is really cool information to have. Google, please tell me how my returning visitors behave as compared to, I didn't know before, I was targeting everybody searching for this keyword. Some of those people were new visitors, some of them were returning visitors. I had no way of knowing which were which, and therefore I had no way of knowing how valuable each of those two groups were to me. By adding a 0% bid mod to your applied audience, you're going to get the data about how those returning visitors act and behave on your site. Now, if you want to dive straight in and not necessarily gather the data first, but just assume that returning visitors are more likely to be more profitable, then you can probably add a bid mod straight away. A conservative range for that would probably be in that sort of 10 to 50% increase, that sort of range. So, 10, 20, up to about 50%, I would say is conservative. Aggressive, which is probably what Google would tell you to do, is to add a bid mod of 100 or 200% to this audience. You only want to do that day one if you're absolutely convinced that your returning customers are much, much more valuable to you Analytics will give you a clue to that. Obviously, you can go and have a look at the data in there. I would suggest you start more conservatively, look at the data, and adjust as needed. All right, strap yourselves in. This is the complicated part, but if you can get your head around this, it will save you a whole bunch of time, because I'm going to assume that you're going to be using RLSA a lot more from now on. So this is how to do it in bulk. Only way, well, other than scripts, of doing this easily is editor. So I'm going to use the same account that we just looked at, and I'm going to assume that we did the first ad group in the interface. This is exactly the same one that I just showed you in the interface. Obviously, I'm blocking out ad group names to protect privacy for my client. So we've got our audience. Now, I did say I picked a 90-day all visitor list for this. I'm going to suggest you do the same thing. I'm going to suggest you pick a pretty broad general remarketing list for this. Don't get too cute with this, certainly not straight away. So don't only layer on people that have abandoned the cart in the last 7 days. Unless you're Amazon, and unless you have like huge amounts of data and huge numbers of people that have abandoned the cart in the last 7 days, don't use too segmented or too small a list. Start pretty broad. You can always segment more later once you have data. Cool. All right. So I'm not going to go through a massive training here of AdWords Editor. I'm going to assume that you have some familiarity with AdWords Editor. If you don't, I'm going to point you towards the AdWords Editor Help Center on Google. There are some excellent training on there and some great videos. I'll make a note of that to add a link to that next time. Please go and have a look at that. Please work out how to use AdWords Editor. I say this every year or so, but it is well worth just taking yourself off to a quiet corner, sitting down with AdWords Editor and just playing with it for an hour or two. It is not the most intuitive tool at times. They've just done a massive redesign, so if you're used to the old look and feel and you hate the new design, get over it, because it ain't going to change. Just go and play with it. Just forget the old way of doing it, work out this new way. And there are some benefits to the new way. Yes, there are some differences, and we won't get into a big argument about AdWords Editor here. Up the top left is what I'm working on. In this case, one particular campaign. And for the sake of clarity, that's the only campaign that I've chosen to download. I haven't downloaded all 48 campaigns in this particular account. Bottom left is then, well, what are the specifics that I want to work on within this campaign, in this case, audiences. And then over on the right-hand side, this is the stuff that I'm actually doing. So the first thing I want to do is click on that big Add Audience button. And then I want to choose either the individual ad groups, or in this case, I'm just going to put the tick in the checkbox next to the campaign name. That's going to highlight all 38 ad groups in this particular campaign. Click OK. Next, it's going to ask me which audience do I want to layer over the top of these ad groups. So obviously we're talking RLSA, so we're going to look at the remarketing lists. We find our remarketing list there, which is our all-site 90-day list. It's got 230,000 people on it. Lovely. Highlight that one, click OK again. And now you can see that that audience has now been added to every ad group in that campaign. The next thing we need to do is to add the bid adjustment. So I highlight all of the audiences. So again, I'm still on the audience section. So bottom left, I'm still on the audience one, not on ad groups. I'm making a change to, I'm working on audiences within my brand AU campaign. And I highlight all of my audiences and I put 30% down in the bid adjustment box that I've highlighted at the bottom of the screen. So the top 3/4 is showing you what has been done, where you actually type the number of the boxes across the bottom there. So I chuck 30 in there, and now I've got a bid adjustment of plus 30% applied to all of the audiences, one for each of the ad groups in this campaign. Now, the next bit, which is really, really important to not forget this bit. Now you come back up, so bottom left. Now we change and we say we want to manage ad groups next. So not audiences anymore. We now want to manage ad groups. We highlight all of them. And just to make it easy here, I've highlighted all of the ad groups, including the removed ones. So the eagle-eyed among you will have noticed that audiences said 32 before, and you were thinking to yourself, but he said there were 38 ad groups. Why the discrepancy? It's because 6 of the ad groups have actually been removed. So there's actually only 32 eligible audiences. Don't worry about it if that bit's confusing you. Doesn't matter. I'm going to highlight them all here, all 38 ad groups. And below the list of ad groups, I need to change. Usually you're on that left-hand button, Edit Selected Ad Groups. That's typically where you start. You may not have even noticed that there are 5 other buttons here. You want to click on the second button, which is Flexible Reach. And then within those 6 options down here for Flexible Reach, you're going to choose Interests in Remarketing, and you're going to change that from Target and Bid to Bid Only. Very, very important that you get that setting right and that you put that on Bid Only. Otherwise, everything that we mentioned before about traffic falling off a cliff might happen, and we don't want that to happen. That would be bad. And then you post your changes from AdWords Editor, and off you go. All good. So one use case of target and bid, just so you understand more fully the differences between the two. And this would be so for top of funnel keywords. So again, let's look at our little graphic here. Now, top of funnel keywords, before we use the keyword buy XYZ online, the top of funnel keyword now might be XYZ. So let's just say it was TV, for example. Now, generally, you are not, if you are selling TVs, generally you wouldn't want to run an ad if the search query, not the keyword, but the search query was just those 2 letters, TV. Somebody typing TV into Google could mean a million different things. Very few of them are looking to buy a TV in the near future. They're the people we want to get in front of. So generally, we would not bid on a keyword, a short, broad, generic, 1-word, possibly 2-word keyword. Generally, we don't bid on those. They're not going to be as profitable as longer tail or keywords with high commercial intent. Hence the big red X over there on the left-hand side. We are not going to show an ad. But if somebody is on our remarketing list, they have been on our site, doesn't matter how they got there, obviously it's not going to be through that ad, but maybe they've visited via direct or organic or email or a different ad on a different keyword, but they're on a remarketing list. Now, if they've been to our site, they are somewhat familiar with us, they are at some level know, like, and trust us, and now they're searching for that generic keyword. Now we can say to Google, yes, please, I'm prepared to spend money to get in front of this person. This is my bid, in this case $2, but only show my ads to people searching for this term if they are on my remarketing list, hence target and bid. So again, we would set up a new campaign. We would go look for some fairly generic, vague, broad terms. We would go through all of the steps that we did before in terms of setting up our ad groups. So, typically we will use single keyword ad groups, otherwise known as SCAGs. So TV, that 1 word would live in 1 ad group, but then we would apply a remarketing audience, maybe all site visitors last 30 days, maybe something like that. Apply that, but this time use target and bid setting. Other than that, everything's the same. And a little bonus use case of RLSA, which is to combine RLSA with DSA. So DSA, if you don't know, it stands for Dynamic Search Ads. Yes, Google love their acronyms. Well worth testing, but works so much better, or it's so, let me put that another way. It's much easier to get this right. It's much harder to get this wrong when you combine DSA with RLSA. DSA is, well, let's walk through it and I'll explain it as we go. So you set up your new campaign, you set up an ad group, and then you add, under the Auto Targets tab, you add a dynamic ad target here. You got a few different choices. The new version of DSA is much better than the old one, but I'm just going to show you a very, very simple setup here and say use all web pages. Essentially, okay, back it up, Rhodes. Essentially, what DSA is doing is saying you're giving Google the reins to say that it's spotted someone who's searching for something, and Google thinks they're going to be a good match for you. Google thinks you should be showing an ad to this person. But what they're searching for doesn't match anything that you've got inside your account, doesn't match any of your existing keywords. So what DSA does is sort of step in and say, look, I know you don't have this keyword in your account, but I'm going to show an ad to this person over here. I'm going to give you all the data of what they're searching for, by the way, as well, which is kind of cool. And I'm going to show an ad to them anyway. Leave me in charge. Just give me a budget. I'll write most of the ad for you. You can write half of it. I'll write the other half. And I will choose how much to bid and show ads to this person. Cool. And what you can do if you want to get more detailed with this, and we will do some training on DSA in PPC Savvy early next year, is you can get more detailed with this and point Google just at certain areas, specific pages or specific categories of pages within your website. For the purposes of combining this with RLSA, and if this is the first DSA campaign you've set up, stick with the middle option here of use all web pages as the target. So we set that up, and then we go to our audiences tab, and generally speaking, you're only going to have one ad group in this style of campaign, so you don't need to worry about editor for this. Easy enough to do this in the interface. You would then go and find some big audience. Again, here I've got a big 90-day list, but this time I'm going to set my targeting to target and bid. So only show these dynamic ads, Google, these DSA ads, only show them if the user is already on my big 90-day remarketing list. And you can see here I've set a bid adjustment of 0% just to kick things off. I don't need to worry about bidding this up because remember it's target and bid. So a bid adjustment in this case would bid everything up. I don't need to worry about that because I'm only targeting people that are both being targeted through DSA and on my remarketing list. So bid, whatever we've set the bid to be, and Google's going to have some control over that. Target and bid will get you really, really good results. And it's worth noting, I'm not going to dig into details on this, but it's worth noting that you can now layer RLSA over the top of shopping campaigns as well. If you're doing e-commerce, you'll probably want to give that a try. All right, if you're still here, let's just do a quick recap on analytics remarketing. As you know, there are videos about this in PPC Savvy where I've given you probably half a dozen use cases of how you might want to use this. One of the best use cases is to look at time on site. So remember I said finding those interested people for lead gen websites in particular is a little harder. So time on site is a really good guide, except that the report that you get as standard in analytics is bloody useless. What is that telling me? Well, all it's telling me is that 207,000 out of 576,000, top line chart versus big number top left, 207,000 out of 576, have spent less than 10 seconds on my website and are responsible for a fraction of the overall page views. That's a pretty good not interested crowd right there. You know, we could debate the 11 to 30 second, 31 to 60 second audience, but first and foremost, let's just change this report so it becomes more usable. So how are we going to do this? I want you to copy down these 3 shortcodes, and then once you've got them, you're going to visit these in different tabs, log into analytics first, and then you can just visit these. This is a shared segment inside of Google Analytics, so you can copy the way I've got it set up and what I'm about to show you, and you can just copy it exactly and apply it to your analytics account straight away. Couldn't be easier than that. So pause the video, write those down. When you've applied these to your analytics account, you're going to find in the list of segments at the top, and if you haven't used custom segments or advanced segments before, you might want to do a little bit of a search or a fight around YouTube to find out a bit of backstory. I'm not going to go into that here because it's in other videos in PPC Savvy where I dig really, really deep into analytics. We've also got that analytics workshop that I recorded a couple of years ago where I dig into this in much more detail as well. So that's about 2.5, 3 hours long. If you really want to learn more about analytics, that's a really, really good place to start. As are many of the free Google courses on analytics that are available online. And if you really want to become a master of it, then Market Motives and Avinash's course over at Market Motives is absolutely stellar. Anyway, yeah, click on those 3 links. It asks, do you want to apply these to your analytics account? You say yes, and then you have these additional 3 segments in your analytics account. And when you apply them all, and be careful to tick them in the right order so that across the top you can see that I've applied the time 0 to 2 minute segment first, and then I've ticked next to time 2 to 6 minutes, and then I've ticked time more than 6 minutes so that I get them in the right order. It's just a bit more intuitive when you're looking at your data. And so you can see for this particular site, people that spent more than 6 minutes on the site represented about 28% of my overall traffic. You can see here that the number of users is around about 100,000 out of around about, about 380,000, I think. So it's around about a quarter of the time, responsible for about a quarter of the users. Cool. However, they are responsible for almost 90% of total revenue. Now remember, we had about 100,000 people on this in this segment. If you look under the transactions column here, the second column, you'll see there are 10,500, nearest damn it, conversions. That leaves us with about 90,000 people in this segment who have exhibited a similar behavior to the people responsible for 90% of our revenue. That is the group of people that you are most interested in targeting with your remarketing efforts. These are people that are highly interested in what you've got, but that have not bought yet. So what we might do in this case is we might create a remarketing list. So how do we do that? In your analytics account, so not in AdWords, but in analytics, you're going to look for that admin tab across the top. You should see 3 columns. Now, depending on the level of access that you have for your analytics account, you may or may not see this. If you don't, talk to the person that set up analytics for you, ask them to increase your level of access. You're looking for the property column in the middle and then remarketing at the bottom of that. You're going to click on the add new audiences bit. And then when you get into here, so the first bit up the top there, link configuration, all you're doing is ensuring that your analytics account is talking to the right Google AdWords account. There should only be one. Follow your nose, it's dead easy. And then define audiences. So there's a bunch of recommended, i.e. Standard audiences that you could use here. We're instead going to get a bit advanced and we're going to hit on create new. And okay, the data I just showed suggested that people that spent more than 6 minutes might be good. I'm going to suggest for you start with a lower number than that, because what that means is you're going to build a larger audience. They're still more average than more interested than the average visitor, but it means you're going to build a bigger remarketing list. Therefore, it's probably more likely to work for you. If you've got hundreds of thousands of visitors, like the example I just showed, feel free to bump this number up. It's in seconds, by the way. So you come into here to the audience builder. You look down the left-hand side there for behavior, and you say behavior. Session duration, I want greater than 30 seconds. Then on the next screen, you then add your membership duration. So what we've done is we've defined the remarketing list. Back in AdWords, if you remember those screens we looked at before, we used a URL rule to define those audiences. People that have visited a page where URL contains cart. People that have visited a page where URL contains checkout. We can't do that for something like time on site. We can't say they visited this page and this page and this page. No, it's just not going to work. The only way to do it is using analytics. So what we're doing here is we're saying, build this list of people that have done XYZ, in this case, spent more than 30 seconds on the site in the last 30 days. And that's going to be our time on site. More than 30 seconds, I should have, in brackets there, 30 days on the end of that audience name. Second example, I'm only going to give you two at this point, just for the sake of simplicity, because again, this is something that you cannot do in Google AdWords. You need analytics for this, is to segment people based on spend. And you might have low spenders, people that have spent, let's say in this example, less than $75, medium spenders, people that have spent between 75 and 150, and then we've got our whales, people that have spent more than $150. And technically, you can set up analytics so that this is a cumulative amount that people have spent with you over time, or it could be what they've spent in a single transaction. We won't need to go into those details today. How do you do this? We go back into the audience builder the same way that we did before. I've put a note at the top there that your Google Analytics account may look a little different to this. If you're using enhanced e-commerce, which if you're an e-commerce site, hopefully you are, then life gets a little bit easier. You look for that enhanced e-com link on the left, come across here, and one of that sub-navigation that you have at the top there is purchased an item. So create a remarketing list of people that have purchased items, and that revenue per user is more than $150. You build your remarketing list off that, as we showed before, onto the next screen, choose a duration, and then obviously the final step, which I haven't showed on here, is you then go back into AdWords, create the ad group, or if you need a new campaign, you create the structure in AdWords and you apply this audience to that. So that might be a straight up remarketing campaign where you're showing ads to people on this list, but now you can use analytics remarketing lists for RLSA. So you can now use these analytic lists, so for instance whales, and say just target these whales with RLSA and just show ads to people that have spent more than $150 with me. All right, I think that's quite enough the complicated stuff. Hopefully this has been very useful to you. Again, please, if anything needs clarification, please do let me know. If it's horribly butchered, I'll re-record it. If it maybe just needs a couple of clarifying questions, please ask them. More than happy. I'm in PPC Savvy every single day asking questions. Please don't feel shy. Please don't feel like it's a stupid question. Please ask the question. If you're confused, I want you to get value out of PPC Savvy. So please ask the question if you think I can deconfuse it a little bit. There's always a chance I'll confuse you more. That's just the risk we'll have to take. Again, hopefully this has been useful for you. Thanks for sticking with me all the way through the end. I love you. Thanks for being in PPC Savvy. Speak to you soon. Bye.